አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን እምቢኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራዕያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎ ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is Adebabay Media's Your Digest program. My name is Untitled Chapter, and I'll be your host for today. Today, I have invited my dearest friend, Africa's most adventurous woman, and the founder of TVP Adventures to come and talk to us about her journey in African tourism, stories of her travels in more than 30 countries, also any experiences that she could share with us about traveling around the world as well. And I'd like to invite everyone to stay with us, and also please go ahead and share, subscribe, and like this conversation as well. Thank you.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የተለያዩ ዜናዎች፣ ውይይቶች፣ አዝናኝና አስተማሪ ዝግጅቶችን በማቅረብ አምስት ዓመታትን አስቆጠረ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የአደባባይ ሚዲያ ቤተሰቦች እንኳን ለአንደኛ ዓመት በዓላችን በሰላም አደረሰን እንላለን። በአንድ ዓመት ጉዞዎች ከወገንተኝነት ለጸዳ በሀገራችን ላይ የተከሰቱ ክስተቶችን በማጋራት ከአድማጭ ተመልካቾች ጋር መልካም ጉዞን አሳልፈናል። ቀጣይ ዓመታትን በሚሰጡን ግምት አስተያየቶች እናንተው ጋር ቀርበን የህዝብ ወገንተኝነትን በማሳየት ታሪክ ጉዞዎችን በስኬት ለመቀጠል አደባባይ ሚዲያ ቆርጦ ተነስተዋል። ለምትደግፉን ውድ የአደባባይ ሚዲያ ቤተሰቦች ከልብ እያመሰገን ቀሪ ዓመታትን እናንተው ጋር ለማስለቅ ድጋፋችሁ ያስፈልገናልና አይለየንም እንላለን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔም ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የሁላችንም ነው። የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ? Do your parents watch አደባባይ ሚዲያ? Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ።
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, today we're going to be talking about traveling within Africa. My guest today is Funmi Oyatogun. She will be joining us all the way from Lagos, Nigeria. She is a geographer, an environmentalist, a game designer, entrepreneur, and also a travel consultant. Some of her work has been featured on BBC, The Returner, Arise Africa, Travel Africa Magazine, and among many more. Welcome, Funmi, and we are honored that you're joining us, and we appreciate you staying really late to have this conversation with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. So let's start. Tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do.
All right. So my name is Funmi Oyatogun, like you already said. I'm from Nigeria, and what I do is pretty simple and straightforward, even though it extends to, it reveals itself in different forms. So I help people explore and experience the world, and I help design experiences. So one of the ways that we've done that is with our travel company, TVP Adventures, where we help people travel the world, but specifically Africa, help Africans travel Africa, help people coming onto the continent, explore the continent and the different gems that there are to see, the different experiences and people that there are to meet. And then we also do games and documentaries that help people travel and explore, even though they're not physically moving to the destination. So one of our, our first game actually, which we have designed, is called Filling the Black. And what it is it's starting Black conversations among different Black populations and different Black cultures, and it just celebrates Black cultures and helps people have fun and learn and have conversations around Blackness in general across different Black contexts. So that's what I do.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think part of, cultural exploration is also learning about people's names and their origin. So can you tell us your full name? That's the one we use as Funmi, and what that means, and we'll go from there.
So my name is Oluwafumilayo. That's my first name. It means God has given me joy. I remember the very first time I mentioned this name to you. It was almost like a tongue twister, and it was a running joke throughout our time together. Just trying to pronounce the name, and it's very interesting to share the story of the name. But I'm not unique in Nigeria or in West Africa for that matter, because in Nigeria, in pretty much every tribe in Nigeria and every ethnic group has a special meaning to names, and names are not just picked out of the hat for the most part. Names have meanings. Children are named based on circumstances, based on prophecies, based on the sort of future that you want to proclaim into this child's life, or the circumstances surrounding their birth. What was the nature of the family that they were born into? If they were born into wealth, if they were born into a royal family, if they were born when the father was abroad, if they were born after the family has waited for a child for a while, has prayed specifically for a child. And this is the case in many West African cultures. I know Ghana is also, the Ghanaian system of naming is pretty popular in many of the Ghanaian ethnic groups, because typically they would name based on the day that the child was born. And so a child born on Monday has a different name from a child born on Tuesday or Wednesday, because these things that tend to have special meanings and connotations. And so if you see a child bearing Abna or Kwana or Nana or Adwa, you would know, the specific day of the week that they were born based on or the specific circumstances surrounding their birth. And that is the same thing, when people hear my name, God has given me joy. There's a sense of joyousness, or there's a sense of understanding of where my parents' minds were at the time when they gave me that name, and sort of the circumstances of the family, or how everybody felt at the moment when I was named.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first heard your name, like you mentioned, it took me a long time to learn to pronounce it, because it's quite a long name. It's Oluwafumilayo. And something that I learned is that, like, these Nigerian names, I've realized now, like, if I see Oluwa at the beginning, I'm like, oh, I know where you're from. Like, you're from Nigeria. Same thing with Olu. And there are some other, like, acronyms that you guys use in the beginning of the name to kind of, like, let us know that, okay, they're, like, from Nigeria, and also of Christian background, because there's a lot of God in your names that y'all use. And the same with Ghana. I know, like, we have a friend where the two sisters are named Equia because they were born on the same dates, right? In the same day, not day of the week. And I always find it really interesting to learn about the different names and the way they are given, especially within Africa, because the same thing with Ethiopia, like, people give you names based on the circumstances that you were born with, or also like which region that you belong in and which language your family speaks also. And that's really a very rich culture around our names, especially in Africa. I don't know much about other continents, but that's awesome. Thanks for sharing with us. I
said no worries, you're welcome. Pleasure to share.
Of course. How did you get into traveling? Let's talk a bit about your traveling adventures, because we're here to talk about that mostly. How did you get into traveling, and specifically traveling in Africa?
So I've always traveled. I was born into a family that really valued experiences and travel and road trips, or trips to nearby places, trips to far places, excursions, that sort of thing. So I've always traveled. But I think what was accidental was starting a travel business, because I knew that I would always have travel in my life, and I'd always enjoyed traveling in whatever capacity I found myself. But I didn't think for once that I would create a business out of it until when I was living in the UK doing my master's. I had to go to Kenya for something, and my very first trip to another African country that was not Nigeria was to Kenya, and I loved it so much. I at that time was running a blog, and so I shared my experiences. I sort of broke down step by step. I really had a great time. I visited 3 or 4 different cities in Kenya, had a wonderful time, met up with Kenyans who I'd never met before. We had I explored from the eyes of locals, and it was so much fun. And I did some touristy things as well. So I got a chance to write them down in my blog, detail them, just provide sort of a guide for anybody who wanted to explore Africa. And I noticed so much. I noticed that there were specific reasons why people had not traveled the continent as much as they could. I had noticed that there were specific reasons why in my 20s I visited Africa for the first time, apart from Nigeria where I was born and raised. I've been to several other countries, but for some reason I hadn't visited an African country. And that was the story of many, many, many Africans. And so for me, it was very important that I helped people. And as I started sharing these guides, people started requesting, packages, or people started requesting specific help. Oh, okay, well, you've done this for Kenya. Can you do this for another country? And I would share some more. Or, oh, can you sort of replicate your trip for us? Can you give us this experience that you had because we loved it so much? And that was how I started the travel company. It was really accidental. I did one trip and then another trip and then another trip. And before you knew it, we had a business helping people. We were so excited to see people's travel dreams come to life. Specifically Africa because, for whatever reason, Africa is not the easiest, or is not perceived as the easiest continent to visit. And part of that is perception, part of that is true. The part of it that is true, is what, for instance, I discussed about the map. I sort of summarized that with the travel map that I did. There are many, many, many different reasons why it might be difficult for Africans to explore fellow African countries. We might have visa restrictions, we might have inaccessible flights, or flights that have, incredible number of stops to get to the next country, or, just really complicated border crossings. And so, when I created that map, it was really to help people see just a snapshot of these are certain countries as a Nigerian with a Nigerian passport, because that's where I lived at that time. These are certain countries that, if it's green, it's easier for you to visit. If it is red, it might be a bit more difficult. You might need to plan it a bit more. You might need to take your time. If it's orange, maybe it's medium difficulty. If you're looking for a quick place to go to or a place that doesn't require too much planning, then these are the green countries. And that was put together based on visa restrictions, flight accessibility, or road accessibility, and how easy it was to get to that country. It factored just ease of getting from Nigeria to that place with a Nigerian passport. And it was very interesting because many other countries sort of replicated that map. So we had Kenyans who decided we're going to do a Kenyan version, a map that shows Kenyans what the ease of travel across the continent is. So for me, it was very important that I help people navigate this space that has been notorious for being a bit difficult. Now that's the part that was actually difficult. Then there was a part of it that was just perception. Unfortunately, we haven't had the best PR in the past. I don't think Africa is overall the most difficult continent to visit. I don't think it's Africa is safe. Africa is fun. Africa is diverse. Africa, there are 54, 53 or 54 countries, depending on who's counting, and 54. And there's so much diversity, from waterfalls to deserts, sometimes in the same country. There's a desert and there's the ocean, like in Namibia, or there's pyramids, there are waterfalls, there are statues. There's an incredible diversity of things to do. There's snow, there's skiing in Southern Africa. And so I wanted people to see Africa for what it was. I wanted people to make an informed decision so that they know that, okay, I now know this thing and I choose to go or I choose not to go, as opposed to all I've heard is this, so all I've heard is that. I wanted to give people information, and so sort of change the perceptions around, what's easy, what's difficult. As you can see, as a Nigerian, majority of the continent is easy to visit with, a little bit of planning. Majority of it is orange, meaning, you might have a layover, or so on your flight, or you might need to apply for a visa, which is a different conversation, right? Because Africa should be a lot easier for Africans than it currently is. Currently, Africa is easier to access by non-Africans. That's just the way passport politics works. But Africa is a lot easier to explore by non-Africans, unfortunately. So that's where we stepped in to make sure that with whatever we can do, with whatever information, with whatever travel packages, seamless planning that we can provide to people, we can sort of make it a bit more easy in terms of logistics and in terms of transportation for people to visit Africa. And we wanted to provide all the information that made people see that, oh, this place is actually beautiful once I can overcome this hurdle, or once I can trust this company to overcome the hurdle for me. Where I'm going is actually a lot better than all the things that I've heard before.
Apologies, I was muted. The thing you said about Africa should be easy for Africans to travel. And I remember when I was traveling to Nigeria, it took a long time for me to secure a visa. And I know you helped me a lot with that as well. And I had an Ethiopian passport at the time. And even the process of applying for a visa, I've got the visa, even getting that visa stamped was a lot more struggle. And I knew that if I had an American passport, that would have been a smoother transition. So I just find that it's always kind of interesting for me to look at that as well. But I think something that our viewers might be interested in is Ethiopia is in the orange section. Why is that? Is it because language barrier, or is it a visa issue, or is there something else?
I think it's about 4 years old now. So a lot has changed. Maybe the map is almost 5 years old. A lot has changed, right? So this map has been updated several times because policies are constantly changing. Right now, Ethiopia is green for Nigerians because in the last year, Ethiopia has made a visa on arrival for everybody. So anybody going to Ethiopia can access visa on arrival. There's Ethiopian Airways that flies directly from Lagos and from many other major cities on the continent and across the world, really. So for a country like Ethiopia, it would be green if I were to update this map in 2021. And a few other countries on the continent have decided that we're interested in boosting our tourism. We're interested in getting people to come to us, including Nigeria. Nigeria is now visa on arrival for all African countries as well. So for Ethiopia, here, what for you would be able to easily get that without all the hassle that we had to go through last time. So a lot of countries are doing that. At the same time, though, I have to say that some countries are stiffening their requirements for other countries. At the time of the map, I believe Tanzania was green for Nigerians because it was visa on arrival. Since then, Tanzania has cut out a good number of African countries from the visa on arrival process, and so you need to apply for a visa 3 months in advance and get a visa authorization letter. Whereas people from US, UK, Australia can just show up and get their visa on arrival without any prior planning. And so these are some of the things that we talk about. There's a lot that needs to be done at the government level, international relations, and making sure that countries are talking to countries properly. They're doing what they need to do to make it easy for us. But there's also a lot that we need to do with the situation. We're not going to stop traveling. We're not going to stop exploring. We're going to do the best we can to talk about our continent and to present our continent the best light. And so in the meantime, based on what we're given, we're trying to make sure that we simplify it as much as possible. If you have a dream to explore anywhere in Africa, we'll make it happen for you. Because when I tell you that I've been to some African countries and my mind was blown, because they never talk about these places, or they talk about these places from the gaze of foreigners as opposed to from our lens and our experience as neighbors, as people who share some similar experiences. It's an incredible continent. I went to Ethiopia last Christmas, and I went to the Seychelles Island as well. And I in some way I wish I hadn't gone to Ethiopia at that time, because you and I had always talked about the fact that we would go together. But I had to go, and so that was the only regret that I had, was that I didn't explore Ethiopia with my Ethiopian friends. But the experience that I had there was incredible. I felt like I could taste, I could touch, I could feel, just from knowing you and from experiencing Ethiopia as a diasporan. but then also just learning more about the history and, our origins as a continent, and, even, religious roots, with Orthodox Christianity. It was an incredible experience that I think a lot of people don't think about when they hear Ethiopia or Kenya or Namibia, for instance. So for us, there's so much to see, so much to do. 54 countries, there's a lot. There's a lot in one, talk less of 54. And so we just want to make sure that if you've ever had that dream, or if you ever are looking for a place that will blow your mind or that will just wow you, there's a lot on the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess on let's stay in the policy side for a little bit. What are some of the policies that you find when you're traveling within the continent that made it really easy for tourists, regardless of what kind of passport you hold?
Did you say policies that make it easy or policies that make it difficult?
Make it easy, and also we could also discuss what makes it difficult.
Policies that make it easy. So, for instance, a travel region like West Africa. If you are from the West African region, you're from ECOWAS, and so you can travel to any ECOWAS country without a visa. Now, if you're traveling by land, you might meet some hindrances, right? Which is where the difficult part comes through, and you might still have to make some fee payments that shouldn't have been because you're supposed to be able to travel uninhibited. But the good thing is you can travel with an ID card. You don't need your passport as long as it's issued by one of the ECOWAS countries. Same thing with East Africa, Southern Africa. A lot of these blocks in the region have their own travel corridors that allow citizens of that region, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, Western Africa, to travel the region. And so in theory, it's pretty easy to visit your neighbor. However, when it comes to difficulty, sometimes some countries will require that before you show up, you have to, show hard cash that you're able to take care of yourself, or there might be some profiling in these countries, when you're flying in, flying out, or there might just be ridiculous visa requirements. There's some African countries that require us to apply for visas. You have to physically show up at an embassy to go to Egypt, for instance, or to go to South Africa. And your application could take a months or weeks. And so those things make it really difficult to explore. And those are things that need to be sorted out at a high-level government, communication level, because we can't fix that. We can't be in charge of visas, but we can do the best we can to apply pressure just to make sure that people know that this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that somebody from a faraway land can easily just just throw a dart at a map on their wall and say, "I want to go here, get on a plane and go." But an average African just can't dream to see their neighbors that easily. But actually, when you overcome those hurdles and actually get to Africa, it's incredible continent, incredible.
Absolutely. So, you're here to give us a bit of a tour as well. So I'll show you a series of pictures. This time we'll go from West Africa to East Africa. These are the places that you take people on a tour on, and these are the places you visited multiple times. So few things you'll do for us is, one, you could tell us about where the place is at, if there's any history attached to it, if you remember the language that they speak, if there's any memory that you have of that place as well. And then I'll also like to ask our viewers to share with us places that they visited on the chat, so we could kind of participate in that conversation as well. So the first picture I want to show is this picture right here. Tell us a little bit about where this is and how we could visit as well, and any history around it.
Adebabay. Adebabay is a mountain in western Nigeria, in Oyo State. This lake is called Iyake Lake. It is a hanging lake. There are two suspended or hanging lakes in the world. There's one in Colorado and there's one in Nigeria. This is the second one in the world. So there are only two, and this is the only natural one because the one in Colorado is actually man-made. So basically, it's a lake on a mountain. So it's an incredible hike, beautiful. About 2 hours to get to the lake by, if you're fast hiker, maybe an hour. And it's serene, lush surroundings. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And then when you get there, there's also a lot of mystique and mystical stories with this lake because it's a sacred lake. Nothing that goes in ever comes out. It's forbidden to take water or take anything from the lake, or to put anything into the lake. Sorry, but I think you can take water out. So this is Iyake Lake. It's on Ado-Awaye Mountain, or in Yoruba, Oke Ado-Awaye. And yeah, so it's in Nigeria. It's about 4 hours west of Lagos, or northwest of Lagos, or north of Lagos. If anybody, comes to Nigeria, it's definitely something that you should make a day trip out of, or just do an overnight trip and go to your state to see the Hanging Lake.
And I think we're still gonna stay in Nigeria for a bit. And I'll wait for our IT department to show us that picture as well. But it's Bagadri, if I'm not mispronouncing it. And tell us a bit about this place as well, and I'll share my experience and what I've learned from visiting this as well.
New Year's Day in 2017. So that picture was taken on New Year's Day in 2017. Badagry is at the coast of Lagos State, so it's in Nigeria. It is one of the biggest slave ports on the slave route. If you go back all the way back to the slave trade, unfortunate disaster that happened on the continent for 400 years. Badagry is one of the places, the points from which people were taking on a ship and shipped abroad to become slaves. So this is the point of no return. In those days, there used to be a ship docked at the end of that photo where you see the ocean. There used to be a ship. They've now put a monument there to sort of act as like a gate of return. You see there's a monument at the edge of that picture. But that used to be a ship, or a few ships, picking up people who had been enslaved, held captive, and they would line up 600 or maybe 1,000 or 400 people from a lot of the West African areas, so all the way from Benin to Nigeria, the hinterlands. They bring them there, lock them up for a few months until the next ship came, and then they'd walk them down in chains about maybe the length of about 2 or 3 miles, all the way to the ship. And yeah, it was called the point of no return because after that point, chances are that they would never return except a few returnees who made it back home. So it's a pretty somber place, very educational, and I think it's a place that everybody has to visit just to sort of visualize and see for yourself just a glimpse of the horrors that happened with the slave trade, so we never forget, and so we actually know where we're coming from and know better where we're going.
Yeah. I think for me, when I visited, what struck me was that it kind of flipped the script about, the transatlantic trade routes for me. Meaning that, I guess before then, I always kind of figured slavery was like the original sin of white people, right? They did this to us kind of mindset that I had. And visiting this place and seeing, the chains Black people put on Black people, seeing that, the history of kidnapping one another and being able and willing to sell one another for the most ridiculous things. On this tour, one of the places we visited was a museum. That museum had the things that they bought to sell slaves with, and it would be like alcohol, mirror, umbrellas, like the most ridiculous things now, like when we think about what a human's life worth is. And it kind of just changed the way I see even race relations in America, and trying to understand, right, slavery is not just something that happened to us, it's something that we fully participated in, and it's something that we took control of, and it's also something that we definitely benefited from. It may not be everyone, but the same that could be said the same about the slave trade with speaking to in relation to white people as well. So that was definitely something that took me aback a bit, visiting that place.
It's always very interesting for people to see the agency, I would say, the agency that our people play. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't tell that story without also highlighting that there were power dynamics, right? You don't bring a gun to a fight when people have cutlasses and expect that it's going to be an equal fight. And so there were definitely power dynamics. I wouldn't say that it was an equal trade or an equal battle, but we definitely had agency. And I think a lot of people don't realize that Black people weren't kidnapped in their sleep by white people. It was there was a trade that went on, and unfortunately, some chiefs on the Black coast benefited from that trade. But there's also the flip side of that story, because the slave traders came with cannons and they came with guns. And so there's it's just very important for us to sort of tell the full scope of the story and not necessarily romanticize either the white side or the Black side.
I like that. Find the balance in the history that we tell about slave trades. So our next picture is this one right here.
I love that you found that photo. So that was me on Mount Cameroon. That was nowhere near the top. I think we were only done with the second day of climbing out of 3 days. And so maybe we're about 3/4 to the top. But that was Mount Cameroon. That is the Cameroonian flag. Absolutely enjoyed climbing this mountain. It was the first major mountain that I climbed. And I learned so much about the mountain, about the people. Ended up in the black sand beaches of Limbe. Cameroon is fantastic. It's really unfortunate that there always seems to be one political tension or the other. And I really, my love and my heart goes out to our brothers and sisters in Cameroon. They're right next door to us in Nigeria. But Mount Cameroon is definitely something that I would say everybody should visit. Gorgeous country, incredible. Part of it is francophone, part of it is anglophone. So much diversity in terms of the local languages and culture. And so this was Mount Cameroon, I think it's the highest mountain in that region, so in Central Africa. Incredible experience. Yay! This is Mount Kilimanjaro. This is not the summit, don't get it twisted. This was the end of, we climbed for 7 days, and this was the end of, I think, the third or fourth day. I think the end of the third day. Was so excited because that was a huge it was so exciting. We had an easy day compared to the previous day. So, we had some time to do photos and all that, which was in the luxury of every day. But Mount Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania. Fascinating mountain, the highest mountain on the continent. Incredible experience. Nobody comes back to this day after climbing such an incredible mountain, after beating your personal best, after pushing your body through so much difficulty and overcoming. And I wish more Africans climb Kilimanjaro because it tends to be explored more by foreigners, which is wonderful. But we just tend to sort of stay away from things like this sometimes. And I think it was a joy for our guides to see a group of 12 Nigerians, and they were so amazed. So I definitely recommend Mount Kilimanjaro for climbers or just people who like adventure or active life in general. You could make it to the top. It's normal people do it every day, but just go for the experience, I would say.
Absolutely. And then this is our next picture.
Yeah, so that was in Uganda. This is on the River Nile, the White Nile specifically. Because I know each country is very territorial about the Nile. Ethiopians are territorial about the Blue Nile. Ugandans are territorial about the White Nile. That was whitewater rafting, another adventurous experience. If you go to Uganda, Jinja is a fascinating place. There's whitewater rafting, there's horseback riding, there is bungee jumping, zip lining. Everybody who goes to Uganda, definitely check out Jinja. It's an incredible little village on the Nile. And then I think the next photo that you showed was one of my all-time favorites from Ethiopia, from Addis Ababa. This was one of the big churches in Addis. I don't remember what the name of the cathedral was now, but it was, it houses a replica of the Ark of the Covenant, and so it was an important place on our journey. And it was just fantastic, So it gave me so much joy to see the inscriptions on the wall of Jesus, of the Virgin Mary, of the angels, and they were all, they looked like Ethiopians, they looked like our people. And it was incredible because, typically we view Christianity as an import, whereas we know that it was on the continent for a while, before it was imported through the slave trade or through colonialism. And so I like that Ethiopia has really, preserved that history. I really enjoyed Addis Ababa. I'm a huge fan of Ethiopian food and veg.
Did you say Dutch?
I said Dutch. And this is a museum as well. This is the museum that houses Lucy, or what's her Ethiopian name? No, the Ethiopian name.
Dinkanesh?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Dinkanesh?
Dinkanesh, yes. So I like to call her by Ethiopian name. So, the oldest known human bones were found in Ethiopia, and she's been named Dinkanesh. So she's housed there, and it's just it's a lovely historical place to visit, So that was Ethiopia, Addis Ababa to be specific.
Yeah. I think that's all we have for now, but one of the reasons, right, for me, of course, like to be able to know about these stories and knowing that Africa is really rich, not only, in just verbatim as saying it, but it really is as rich as we all talk about it. But then at the same time, also something I really enjoy following TVP Adventures on social media is also seeing Black people travel. Right, seeing Africans travel within Africa and finding that joy and finding, each other's history and traditions, and just discovering each other's places, right, where we came from and such. And I think it's easier to talk about it sitting in the diaspora, where we tend to meet different people from the continent, like from different countries and such. Whereas if we're sitting, for example, in Lagos, or like in Nigeria, in Lagos, or in Addis, it's kind of difficult. It's not as easy to find those different people to share your culture with and to learn from them. So this travel culture that you're creating is amazing to me, at least for me as someone that would love to travel more on the continent.
Thank you. I think for us, it's if people don't know, they can't be excited about it. They can't dream about it. They can't have Victoria Falls on their bucket list if they haven't heard much about Victoria Falls or Mosi or Atunia, which is what the locals call it. If people haven't heard about Lalibela, they can't have Lalibela on their bucket list. And so we just want to make sure that we put the information out there, people know about it, and then they can make an informed decision. I strongly believe that if more people knew about Africa, more people would travel Africa.
Yeah. So let's stay a bit in Addis Ababa. I wonder if what you found unique about Addis Ababa when you're traveling versus the other countries on the continent you've seen. At the same time, though, did it remind you of a different city when you were there as well?
So one thing I love about Addis Ababa, but Ethiopia in general is, because Ethiopians have their own script, it's really, really cool to see everything written in the Amharic script. We're used to seeing our local languages everywhere we go on the continent. We're used to seeing, local languages everywhere. But we're used to seeing it in Roman script, in the English language script. But it was really cool to see everything in Ethiopia in English, but then also in the traditional script. And so for me, that was really beautiful because it just speaks of a writing system, a learning system, a system of documentation that preceded, what we've been sort of handed over in all these other countries. It seems as if Ethiopia has managed to marry both modernization and tradition in a way that a lot of other countries haven't been fortunate to do. So I really appreciate that about Ethiopia. I was mesmerized when we went to Mekato, and we went incense shopping. Incredible. I felt like I was walking through Bible days, going looking for frankincense and myrrh and all these beautiful smells. And I still have some of them, which I burn from time to time. But I don't know if Addis reminded me particularly of any other African city because it just had a very throwback vibe to it that I haven't seen in other cities per se. But I really appreciated it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. We'll take a quick break and come back. But before we do, I just want to remind our viewers, please go ahead and continue to share your travel adventures with us, places that you traveled, drop out the city or the states or the country's name or anything that you found really fascinating about that place that you've been to. And we'll be right back.
Adebabay Media Yanina. Adebabay Media Yanina. Adebabay Media Yanina. Adebabay Media የሁላችንም ነው። የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ? Do your parents watch Adebabay Media? Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የተለያዩ ወቅታዊ ዜናዎች፣ ውይይቶች፣ አዝናኝና አስተማሪ ዝግጅቶችን በማቅረብ 1 ዓመታትን አስቆጠረ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ውድ የአደባባይ ሚዲያ ቤተሰቦች እንኳን ለ1ኛ ዓመት በዓላችን በሰላም አደረሰን እያለን በ1 ዓመት ጉዞዎች ከወገንተኝነት በጸዳ በሀገራችን ላይ የተከሰቱ ክስተቶችን በማጋራት ከአድማጭ ተመልካቾች ጋር መልካም ጉዞን አሳልፈናል። ቀጣይ ዓመታትን በሚሰጡን ግንድ አስተያየቶች እናንተው ጋር ቀርበን የህዝብ ወገንተኝነትን በማሳየት ቀሪ ጉዞአችንን በስኬት ለመቀጠል አደባባይ ሚዲያ ቆርጦ ተነስተዋል። ለምትደግፉን ውድ የአደባባይ ሚዲያ ቤተሰቦች ከልብ እያመሰገንን ቀሪ ዓመታትን እናንተው ጋር ለማስለቅ ድጋፋችሁ ያስፈልገናልና አይለየንም እንላለን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, we're having a conversation with our guest, Funmi Oyatogun, about traveling within Africa, really the joy of traveling within Africa and discovering each other's cultures and traditions. And I want to ask you, Funmi, what are some of your favorite lessons that you've learned from traveling in Africa?
One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that we need to be intentional about seeking African stories that are told by Africans, because we can all fall into the trap of being fed, either stories that are romanticized or stories that are just horrible or incomplete about the continent. So it's always a good idea to question from where we've gotten our information. What you've heard about Somalia, where did you hear it from? Who told you that? What you've heard about Senegal, where did you hear it from and who told you that? I think it really helps that we are more intentional about being objective about the source of our information. There's great stuff happening on the continent. There's bad stuff happening on the continent, just like every other continent, just like every other city, every other country. But let's be more intentional, because when you go to the continent, you realize in one sense how normal everybody else is, how everybody else is living their normal life. But in another sense, how surprising it is, because you probably didn't expect what you see, the normalcy or the wonder that you see when you get there. It's usually just not told properly.
Yeah.
It's usually told for sinister reasons, right? So it's very important to find out where you're getting your information about Africa from. And I think that really helps you explore with an open mind when you go to the continent. I've also really learned that we all have our stereotypes of each other. It's incredible. We do. When I go to countries, it's always very fascinating to hear what people say when they first think I'm Ghanaian and then they find out that I'm Nigerian. Or when they first think, I don't know, I'm American or something, and then they find out I'm Nigerian. It's very interesting to hear what they say when they find out I'm Nigerian, and they share with me based on the stereotypes that they heard from the media or from people that they've met. So it's really cool to also see that we have stereotypes of each other, even on the continent, even for next door countries. It's pretty interesting. But all in all, I just really appreciate the sense of I've never felt out of place in any African country, even the ones that were most different from mine. There were some countries that felt very similar to mine. There were some countries that felt familiar, whether or not I've been there. But I haven't been to one African country where I felt out of place. I felt like I wasn't welcome, I didn't belong. And I haven't been to all. So, we need to go to all and be able to tell. But I generally never felt a hostility. I never felt like this is not where you belong. You're not welcome here. I never felt that. I always felt like I belonged in that moment, in that place.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, because I think whether we know it or not, there's that sense of fear when it comes to traveling within the continent, and we're more, because like you said earlier, the advertisement of the places that we want to go to in Africa is very limited, and it's also the stories that are told are not necessarily for the best of intentions. It makes it really hard to say, I'm just gonna pack my bags and go to Uganda and I know nothing will happen to me, versus I'll pack up my bags and go to London and I know nothing will happen to me, right? So that is always an interesting idea of these places that at least I continue to navigate as far as my understanding and willingness to travel on the continent. So thank you for sharing those lessons. But also mentioning, the cultures and traditions that you've been exposed to so far. What have you found that were really similar in most countries as far as the way we interact with each other, maybe your language or food, that reminded you of another country?
Similarities in terms of, I think we all have that sense of, the value of an extended family. I think that's something that cuts across every African country and almost every tribe in every African country, because no country is homogeneous. Nigeria has over 350 tribes that all have very different functionalities when it comes to values and will I say cultural elements. But I think that sense of the family is extended. The core of the family is extended. You don't exist as mother, father, and child alone. There are branches, there are roots, there are places you come from. That sense of this is where my tentacles spread and this is where my roots are is very strong throughout the continent. I've seen it everywhere. Our food is very different. Our food is very different. You can sort of draw trends, patterns, and similarities in regions. I think you can draw some trends in West Africa, you can draw some trends in East Africa, Southern, Central, Northern, Islands. But our food is very different. There's no such thing as African food. Nigerian food is very different from Cabo Verdean food. And in Nigeria, food in Kaduna is very different from food in Port Harcourt. But it's very interesting to see how, you start to see regional similarities. Yes. Okay. In terms of what else? Our languages are also vastly different. I mean, there's no African language, right? In Nigeria, we have over 350 languages. And so it's very cool to see other people just exist in the language, to learn new languages, to learn new words when you're going to new areas, to learn new words in different regions. So, you're going to Zimbabwe and first learning Shona words, and then you're going, to Kenya and you learn some Swahili words, some Luo words, some Kikuyu words. So it's very interesting.
So, in that spirit of the diaspora being fully engaged and involved in building the African tourism, right? I know you mentioned a few of them already, but what are the things that you wish the African diaspora knew about traveling within the continent? If you could summarize that for us, or if there's any other ideas you want to share as well.
I think what I want the African diaspora to know is what I want everybody to know. When you travel, you open up your heart to something new. You open up your heart to someone new. You don't copy and paste your home experiences when you travel. It's a bit arrogant, I think. And so I want people to be very open to the experiences that they're looking for. You know, if you're looking for travel, if you're looking for an experience, I think I would say that I would encourage people to open their hearts out. There's some things that are basic humanity that are the same everywhere you go, but there are many things that are going to differ. And I would like for people to just be a bit more open-minded to the difference that you will find. Because if you're looking for sameness, you know, you could have as well as stayed at home. And so that's something that I would encourage everybody. This is for the African diaspora, it's for the world in general. It's for us visiting other countries in the continent, you know. Don't try to look for your everyday norms in a new place, you know. In somebody else's home, you're a guest. And so it's very gracious to sort of respect the norms and the customs of your guests, of your host, sorry. And then I also think this is very important to be cautious. Caution is not fear. I think a lot of people mistake the two. It's very, very responsible to be cautious when you're going anywhere. Be cautious when you get in your car. Be cautious when you're going to the mall. Be cautious when you're going to a different country where you speak the language. Be cautious when you're going to a different country when you don't speak the language. Be alert, be cautious, be prepared, know what to expect, be ready for surprises. Just be cautious, keep your eye open, make sure you're not taking advantage of. These are things you should do when you're traveling, period. And it's valuable if you're going to Vietnam, it's valuable if you're going to Australia, it's valuable if you're going to Jamaica, and it's valuable if you're coming to Lagos, Nigeria, or you're going to Harare, Zimbabwe. Very important to be cautious, but make sure your caution doesn't breed fear. I think those things are very, very important. Very important to distinguish. Be cautious, be optimistic, be excited, be ready, but don't carry a fear or carry a bias with you, or else you either hinder yourself or you find what you're looking for in that fear. So I think it's very important to let people remember that caution is very critical when you're going anywhere, but it shouldn't become fear.
I love that. So most of our viewers are of Ethiopian and Eritrean background, right? And we tend to make it home, once a year, twice a year, as often as we can. If we decide now we want to take, a week of that time and travel within the continent, where would you suggest that we could go with the time limit, with the short amount of time we have, also being somewhat on a budget?
Going to Addis Ababa and you had a week. And you could only visit one place, yeah?
One or two, however many you think we should visit.
Honestly, if I had a week, I would from Addis, I would probably go. This is tricky. The good news is Ethiopian Airways flies everywhere, so you're one flight away from everything. That's the beauty, right? But I'd say if you're looking for something closer to home, I'd recommend you go to Kenya. Spend some days. I'd do if you had a week, I'd spend the whole week in one country. By the way, just so you can sort of immerse yourself a bit. So I think if you're looking for something close to home, do 3 days in Nairobi and maybe 3 or 4 days in on the Kenyan coast. So do the city, the wildlife, then go out into nature, the beaches, relax, enjoy the Indian Ocean. If you are looking for something more, far, I'd say go to Lagos. Take a flight from Addis Ababa to Lagos. Come see the hustle and the bustle of Lagos. There's no two cities like it. And then, spend a day or two in the west. So go to Abeokuta and climb Oluma Rock, or go to Badagry, or go to Adebabay, the Yake Lake that we talked about in the photo. Enjoy a Lagos party, COVID safe, of course. Take a boat ride along the coast. Lagos is a fantastic city, highly underrepresented. The beaches, the beach experiences, the beach houses, the city, the bustle. So if you wanted something close to home, go to Kenya. If you wanted something a bit of a distance, go to Nigeria.
You know, when you mentioned the bustle of Lagos, it reminded me of something, and I don't know if you've seen it in Ethiopia as well. Something I saw when I was in Lagos was that you guys have this taxi system, and and as for us, we call them wayalas, where they call out the places that they're gonna go to, and then everybody just kind of gets into that taxi and goes to the places that they want to get to. And for me, I thought that was just like a uniquely Ethiopian thing, I guess. So when I saw those taxis and when I saw, the people that worked around it and the culture being very, very similar from the taxi system of Ethiopia, it was just a nice surprise and a delight. I don't know if you noticed that when you were in Ethiopia as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common in a lot of African countries. The shuttle buses, we call them downfalls in Lagos. Or kabu kabus for the smaller ones. So it's really it's cool to see for people who are new. For us, it's just another part of our everyday life in
the city. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll continue this conversation. We're at the end of our event today here, but I'd like to invite everyone, please go ahead and share and like this conversation, and we'll be right back after a quick break.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምብኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራዕያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎ ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about touring Africa with Funmi Oyatogun. Let me just say the full name. And now, I like to ask me now, I know you made a game. Tell us a bit about the game and where we can find it and such, and why you made it really mostly.
So, Fill in the Black is our game. It's a play on the popular quiz phrase, Fill in the Black. So, Fill in the Black is a guessing game that celebrates Blackness. That's really what it is. It's very similar to your guessing games like Taboo or Charade or Gestures. And so where you have to describe a word without using other words for your team, and it gets loud, it gets vibrant, but it's really exciting because it connects Black cultures around the world. And so everybody finds words that they can relate to. Everybody finds words that, may not be uniquely Black, but a lot of Black people can definitely relate to. So the game is available on Shopify. So if you just Google Fill in the Black, it's available in the US, UK, Canada, and Nigeria. And on private request, you can definitely ship to other countries around the world. But it's been a hit in the last few months, and everybody seems to love the fact that they have a game that they can relate to for Black, celebrate Blackness. So it's a game for everybody, for anybody in the world, whatever race, whatever color, whatever your creed, as long as you're interested in learning more about Black people, Blackness, Black icons, Black spaces, and just celebrating Blackness in general. Black History Month is coming up in February, so I'm really excited to see more and more people include this game in their celebration for Black History Month.
Absolutely. And for me, I guess I loved seeing Ethiopian names and places in a game, and I think that's the first time I've ever experienced the culture and traditions and the history of Ethiopia included in a game in the larger sense of who are we as Black people in the world, really. So I really appreciated that game, for me at least. So thank you for making it.
I'm glad. I'm really, really glad to hear that you worked it. And thanks for being a part of sort of our test group, and helping to really refine and test the game before it went live.
It was really it was a pleasure to be part of it for sure. I have a couple of questions to ask you, I guess, as we wrap this up. One is, what are some of the things that are still on your travel bucket list?
On the continent?
Anywhere on the continent or in the world.
Listen, I want to see all the countries of the world, right? So there's no need to specify countries. But specifically on the continent, I want to go back to Ethiopia and see Lalibela. I would be honored to explore more of, Central Africa. So I haven't been to the Congos, DRC Congo, Republic of Congo, some of the smaller islands as well. In terms of specific destinations, I absolutely adored Victoria Falls. I was blown away by Victoria Falls, Mosi Watunya in Zimbabwe. So I'd love to go back and see the ruins as well in Zimbabwe. And then let's see, one more. Again, I want to see all the countries of the world. So one more would be, I would say, maybe Senegal. I've not been to Senegal, and yes, West Africans are really big on jollof rice, our pride and joy. But it actually originates in Senegal, so I'd love to go really see how the Wolof people make jollof rice. That would give me a lot of joy.
For as much as Nigerians and Ghanaians fought over jollof rice, I never thought it originated in Senegal. So when I found that out, I was quite surprised.
I know it originated, and I think that's why we're also very respectful. We do not include Senegal when we are, we pay homage. With all due respect, we would never try to compete with Senegalese jollof. So I think it's really just us amongst ourselves fighting for who deserves to be a worthy ambassador of this amazing thing that Senegal has given to us. But it's a very friendly fight, and we take our jollof very seriously.
Very seriously. So jollof rice, for those of you that haven't heard of it, quite possibly, I would say jollof rice is like the injera of Nigerians and Ghanaians. I think that's the equivalent I can compare it to. It's the everyday meal, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, for me.
But it's also the celebratory meal. It's the thing that it's the first thing you ask your foreign friends to try if they want to try Nigerian food. It's the thing that is in all the party, but it's also it's I don't know, it gives us so much joy. Like you said, injera gives Ethiopians a lot of joy, and I have to confess that he put me onto injera when we were in college. I have a lot of friends who don't like injera. They think it's sour. They're not a fan. Thank you so much for getting me into injera when I was 16, so that I didn't have to grow up and be culturally deficit. Because as you know, I love Awazi chips are my favorite with injera. And thank you, because we used to go to Nile. I don't know if you remember. We used to go eat injera all the time. Like sometimes you would make it. Sometimes your sister would make it, and I remember eating injera in Adebabay and just feeling very grateful that I had experienced it with Ethiopians first.
Absolutely. It's always great to experience culture with someone that grew up in it. I think it makes it a lot more authentic for me. I don't know if that's the right word to use. So where do we find you? How do we travel with you? How do we book our next, adventure on the continent?
Well, so we're always doing something. We're always exploring games, documentaries, travel, as long as it's safe with COVID. So definitely, I would say find us at TVP Adventures on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. We are TVP Adventures, and our website is tvpadventures.com. You can reach out to any one of our team. We absolutely love to help people travel. So if this is something that you want to do, this is something that gives you joy, by all means, reach out to us. Ask questions. Even if you're not booking a trip with us, we love to answer questions and just, generally follow our content, and you'd be a lot more inspired by Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here and taking your time. I know it's like past midnight at this point where you are. If you have any last words that you want to say, I'll give you the floor.
No, I just want to say thank you. Well done with what you're doing for Abisha people and just like Abisha culture in general. I think we need more and more and more platforms and spaces to celebrate ourselves and our culture. So well done, and thanks for having me as the first non-Abisha. Even though I think I'm Abisha by association at this point. If you have me, but
You really are. Absolutely. We have adopted you. So if you are, needing a second passport, I will definitely put you down.
Yeah,
for that route. Absolutely. Thanks so much for being here, and everyone that joined us. I hope y'all learned as much as I have, and you are a little bit more courageous and brave now to travel through the continent and really discover different cultures and traditions that may be similar to us or completely different, but amongst our own people, and being able to explore Africa and really fall in love with it from our personal experience as well. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead and share and like this conversation, and we'll be back with a different event next week. Until then, have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የተለያዩ ወቅታዊ ዜናዎች፣ ውይይቶች፣ አዝናኝና አስተማሪ ዝግጅቶችን በማቅረብ 1 ዓመታትን አስቆጠረ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የአደባባይ ሚዲያ ቤተሰቦች እንኳን ለ1ኛ ዓመት በዓላችን በሰላም አደረሰን እያለን በ1 ዓመት ጉዞአችን ከወገንተኝነት በጸዳ በሀገራችን ላይ የተከሰቱ ክስተቶችን በማጋራት ከአድማጭ ተመልካቾች ጋር መልካም ጉዞን አሳልፈናል። ቀጣይ ዓመታትን በሚሰጡን ግንድ አስተያየቶች እናንተው ጋር ቀርበን የህዝብ ወገንተኝነትን በማሳየት ቀሪ ጉዞአችን በስኬት ለመቀጠል አደባባይ ሚዲያ ቆርጦ ተነስተዋል። ለምትደግፉን ውድ አደባባይ ሚዲያ ቤተሰቦች ከልብ